discussing the hearing that Harry Reid had regarding the FLDS and the persecution that they've undergone in El Dorado, Texas. And I know that Bill was talking about the broken bones that some of the children have suffered under the care of CPS or their foster children. But one thing that I think it's important to highlight here, because this sort of thing happens to other children under the care of CPS just because of the nature of that agency. And that is what happened when they first took those children away and they were put in Fort Concho or in the Coliseum. And Deputy Headmistress, why don't you discuss what some of the non-CPS workers, specifically the mental health, mental retardation workers, had to say about how CPS treated those children and mothers?
One of them said she had not seen anything like it since she had read about Nazi Germany. They pretty much corroborated everything that the FLDS mothers had been saying. They said they watched CPS workers lie to the mothers, that they were rude to them, they were disrespectful, that they were not concerned about the children's conditions. They followed a sobbing toddler around who was asking for somebody to rock him. CPS workers just followed him around and took notes until his 8-year-old sibling came over and picked him up and said he would rock the little guy. One of them, this was just disgusting, one of the mental health workers said she went to use a bathroom, and a CPS worker came over and said, oh, no, you don't want to use the same bathrooms as those FLDS women. Who knows what diseases they have. She also lied and told her that they had all tested positive for all kinds of STDs, and tests had not even been done. It's sort of like the magic x-rays that Bill mentioned. They apparently just have this ability to look at you and know that you have an STD and you have a broken bone and you're 16 even though your birth certificate says 37. They testified before their board. They were so concerned. They had a non-disclosure agreement, so they could not sign their names to it. But they went in person before their board, and their board was so concerned that he presented it, their board president presented it to the governor and to the media. The governor, of course, just backed up CPS, said he was very proud of them.
Well, not only that, wasn't there a case of a baby being taken to the hospital with dehydration after they forcibly separated the children and mothers?
One of the mental health workers said that during the separation, because there was so much the separating of the mothers and the children, because it was such a disruptive process, so much chaos, that one little girl was left in her stroller, I believe, for 24 hours before somebody realized that nobody had fed or given her anything to drink, and she was dehydrated and had to be taken to the hospital.
My gosh. So we've got neglect on the part of CPS for which they will suffer no consequences, apparently. We've got demonization of a people that, to me, is similar to what the Nazis did to the Jews, because they made up all sorts of stories about them. And in fact, one thing that I'd like to know is that when the Nazis were making the case to the German people about the Jews, they had their own little filmmaker called Leni Riefenstahl, who turned out anti-Jewish propaganda. We kind of have that with regard to the FLDS, don't we?
Yes, Blood Libel.
Her name is Marley Meisner.
Well, but there's actually a filmmaker who belonged to a polygamous sect that apparently was actually violent, who is making anti-FLDS films.
I forget the name of it. But, well, and Harvey Hildebrand, when he was trying to change these laws in 2005, he presented testimony alleging that members of the FLDS killed small animals to give their children the feel of blood on their hands.
Oh, my gosh.
And that was in the writ of habeas corpus that the three fathers filed. That's where I read about that. The lawyer for the three fathers. Sorry.
Yes.
About the cadaver dogs.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Digging up the gardens because they were, sure, they've been listening to anti-FLDS people for so long who talk about, buried babies. It reminds me of the stories about the Jews feeding on Christian blood for their communion. It's just bizarre.
I always wondered, how could the German people not see this spectacle, not see their neighbors disappear, not see all this demonization, and harken back to their Christian values and say, stop?
Well, I can speak a little bit to that. They didn't see it to begin with. It was Hitler cloaked his movement very carefully early on in a very similar way to Texas not just Texas CPS, but CPS all around the country, emphasizing the importance of children. In fact, Hitler himself, in a very famous letter about the time that he wrote Mein Kampf, said that something to the effect of that people will do almost anything. They will make almost any sacrifice if you tell them that it is on behalf of the children. And so Germany slid into the abyss with Hitler in very small steps to begin with, focusing on the children, and they had this brilliant idea of strengthening families and improving society. It was a very feel-good kind of a thing that they did. It sounded good, and it was designed to attack a huge primarily economic problem, and good people wanted to believe that somebody could save them from their problems, and so they little by little just slid into it. And now we've got Barbara Walters. Yeah, very similar kind of a situation. And the next step with Germany was the corruption of the judiciary. They were able to sway judges who began committing to insane asylums people who were marginally mentally ill, and then from the mentally ill they started going after people who were politically undesirable, and then the Jews.
Well, and we kind of are traveling that path with our judiciary in CPS cases because a little thing called therapeutic justice is creeping into our system, which is turning judges into social workers as opposed to impartial arbiters of cases in these CPS cases. And are you seeing that, Kurt?
Absolutely. I think one of the best examples of that is Texas Supreme Court Justice Harriet O'Neill and her Permanent Judicial Commission on Children, Youth, and Families. What this commission is doing and is designed to do is to make the courts of Texas essentially collaborators, and that's the exact wording they use. That's not my word, it's theirs. Collaborators with Texas CPS for the good of the children. And what it does is it completely removes from the constitutional framework the courts as impartial gatekeepers and arbiters of justice.
Okay.
We just remove from the scene the entire judiciary.
Well, we're running out of time, but I'd like for y'all to stay over because I'd like everybody to be able to tell the folks what their website is. When we come back, we'll have a little less than 3-minute segment, but instead of me wrapping up, I'd rather have everybody stay on the line so they can let people know where to go read your materials. So if you'll stay over, and if everybody will stay over and listen, I will be right back with my guests. Jerri Ward back with my panel, and we're going to talk really fast. We just have a few minutes. And first of all, Bill and Mary, can you tell us how we can help preserve due process, religious liberty, and help the FLDS?
Go ahead,
Well,
Bill.
first of all, what we're doing is we've got a petition out there, and we're going to present it to people in Washington and even people in Texas who seem to have a deaf ear. It's called voicesforthechildren.org. It currently it's 5 days old. It has 1,200 signatures. Some of the most beautiful people in Texas and around the country and Canada. And most of them are Dan Fisher, Flora, and Carol and Jessup's relatives, including Dan's mother, who is anti-FLDS. But if you want to go to that site and read the comments, I think it would be very educational.
And Mary, do you have anything add?
Yes, I would strongly encourage people to call your legislators and let your Senate know what you think about this. These people are entitled to their due process. They should have it. There's grave injustices going on, and people need to make their feelings known. If they don't do it now, then they're going to find their own rights on the chopping block. I mean, it's going to come around for everybody. We can't allow it to go unaddressed.
The FLDS is the canary in the mine right now. And why don't you give your web address, Mary?
It is principalvoices.org, and principal is spelled with a P-L-E, not a P-A-L, but principalvoices.org.
And Headmistress, why don't you tell everybody where you blog and where they can find your great articles on the FLDS and other things, and what the web address is?
heartkeepercommonroom.blogspot.com. If you Google the Common Room, we're usually at the top of the page. My FLDS posts are labeled FLDS and CPS, so search for those. And
Kurt, quickly give the web addresses of your sites.
iperceive.net and schultzkelaw.com. That's schulzke.com.
Well, I want to thank everybody for being with me today. This has been very informative, and I hope everybody has learned a lot about this. Thank you, panel, for being with me, and I'll be back next week for another show of I Object, Justice Examined.
This is Right Talk Radio.